In today's world where instant gratification is sold as success, is it any wonder so many midlife professionals feel directionless? Discipline isn't outdated, it's the tool you've been avoiding. Modern self-help tells you to follow your passion and work when inspired. The truth? That advice is quietly destroying your focus, your health, and your future. You're not tired, you're scattered. And the reason? You've been conditioned to mistake constant busyness for meaningful progress. Welcome to StoicCraft, channel where ancient wisdom meets modern reality. Here, we unpack Stoic philosophy not as abstract ideals, but as practical systems for reclaiming focus, discipline, and inner strength, especially for those navigating the complex pressures of modern adulthood. Discipline is not just a set of routines, habits, or early morning alarms. It's something much deeper. It's about identity. It's about building a solid framework for yourself in a world that constantly tries to drag you into distraction, chaos, and disorder. And if your mind often feels foggy, scattered, or restless, understand this. It's not because you're flawed. It's not because you're broken. It's because you've been operating without personal order, without structure, a personal law to live by. In the absence of that inner order, the mind begins to deteriorate, though often in subtle, silent ways. You see it in wasted mornings, abandoned intentions, forgotten priorities, and that quiet but persistent regret, whispering that you could have been more, done more, lived more. The Stoics understood this long before modern neuroscience ever put it into scientific terms. They didn't wait for motivation to appear. They didn't hope for the perfect moment to arrive. They didn't build their lives on temporary emotions. They lived by a code of personal philosophy that kept them steady even when emotions raged, or when life itself seemed to lose all sense of meaning, because they grasped a brutal truth. Without inner discipline, you are destined to be a prisoner of external chaos. You won't drift into clarity. You won't stumble upon peace. Without intentional structure, life drags you wherever it wants. But here's the flip side. When you take back control of your mind, when you consciously choose structure over impulse, when you prioritize intention over habit, presence over mindless distraction, you become something rare. You become dangerous in the best possible way. This isn't about rigid schedules or sterile life hacks. It's about transforming discipline from something cold and mechanical into something sacred, something alive within you. Whether you're an artist crafting your next masterpiece, a student navigating complexity, a leader guiding others, or simply someone trying to hold yourself together through life's storms, discipline is your anchor. These 12 Stoic laws aren't superficial tips. They are a shift in perspective. They're a reminder that you don't need to feel ready to become who you were meant to be. You simply need to act, especially when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's quiet, especially when no one else is watching. Because here's the truth. Real discipline doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't need applause. It simply shows up quietly, relentlessly, until one day you look back and realize you haven't just built a few better habits, you've built a new self. Law 1. Discipline is self-respect made visible. Ask yourself honestly, how do you treat yourself when no one's watching? Not when the camera is on. Not when someone else is expecting something from you. not when there's a deadline pushing you forward or external praise waiting as a reward. I'm talking about those quiet moments, those private, invisible crossroads where it's just you, your choices, and your future. That's where real discipline lives. Not in the spreadsheets, not in the planners, but in those intimate moments when no one is holding you accountable but yourself. It's in those moments that you decide who you're becoming. At its core, discipline isn't about punishment. It's not about denying yourself happiness or living a joyless life. It's not about cold restriction. It's about self-respect. It's about making decisions that reflect the future you desire, not the emotions you're temporarily feeling. It's choosing what strengthens you over what merely soothes you. Not because you hate who you are, but because you've finally learned to respect yourself enough to stop betraying your potential. This is what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Because if you're not mastering your own urges, fears, and distractions, then someone or something else is. Maybe it's a craving. Maybe it's a fleeting emotion. Maybe it's a cultural trend. But without discipline, your life is being dictated by whatever is loudest in the moment. And worst of all, you often don't notice it happening. You gradually become a stranger to your own potential. Here's where many people misunderstand. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself through life like a machine. It's not a war against yourself. True discipline feels like a homecoming. It's a reunion with your own power. It's a quiet but firm declaration to yourself. I will no longer abandon the person I'm capable of becoming. Let's bring this down to something simple yet powerful. Picture this. It's 6 a.m., your alarm rings, you're tired. You don't want to get up. Every cell in your body whispers just 5 more minutes. But you made a promise, not to your coach, not to your boss, not to Instagram, to yourself. So you rise, you stretch. You start your day, not because it feels good, not because you're motivated, but because this small moment is sacred. It's you telling yourself, my goals matter more than my mood. That moment, that's discipline. And it's not harsh. It's beautiful. Or imagine this scenario. You've committed to improving your health, but now you're at a dinner table, surrounded by indulgence and friendly pressure to just relax. You feel the pull to conform, to say yes, to let go of your standards, but instead you pause, you breathe, you remember why you started, and in that moment you choose to stay aligned with your values. That choice might seem small to the world, but to you it's profound. It's sacred. It's not about calories. It's about authorship. It's about reclaiming your role as the author of your own life. And here's a truth most people overlook. Discipline isn't just how you treat yourself. It's how you teach the world to treat you. When you respect your own time, people start respecting it too. When you enforce your boundaries, people feel them. When you consistently honor your promises to yourself, you start walking differently, speaking differently, showing up differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority, the authority that comes from alignment between your words and your actions. Discipline is not a punishment. It's how you build the life and the self we're always capable of becoming. In today's culture of instant gratification, discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but it is, in fact, the ultimate form of self-respect. Choosing what strengthens you over what comforts you, especially in solitude, is a true test of integrity. Real-life example. A writer committing to write every morning regardless of inspiration slowly becomes someone who no longer depends on moods to create meaningful work. That shift isn't in the task, it's in the identity. Because deep down, you know you're living in alignment. You're not perfect, but you're real. And in today's world where everyone's broadcasting curated versions of themselves, that quiet authenticity, that's rare power. But let's not deceive ourselves. Discipline isn't easy. It will force you to confront your shadows. It will expose every lie you've whispered to yourself, the ones about how much time you had left, how tomorrow would be different, how just this once doesn't matter. Discipline strips away the illusion of potential and demands something harsher yet more freeing, actual work. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. Because it's easier, infinitely easier, to live in the comforting illusion of later than in the discomfort of now. This is precisely where Stoicism becomes not just relevant, but essential. Not as a set of rigid doctrines, but as a compass. A Stoic doesn't wait for a flash of motivation. They don't negotiate with their lesser impulses. They don't indulge every fleeting feeling. They act consistently, deliberately, not because it's glamorous, not because someone's watching, but because it's the right thing to do. Because every disciplined choice is a quiet vote cast for the person they're building themselves into. So, if discipline feels like a struggle to you, stop searching for hacks. Stop looking for productivity tricks. Look for something much harder to face. Honesty. Where are you abandoning yourself? Where are you trading your future for a brief moment of relief? Where are you giving away your own power in exchange for the comfort of inaction? And then ask the harder question. What might change if you showed up for yourself the way you show up for others? What if you kept the promises you make to yourself with the same consistency that you honor your commitments to friends, family, or your employer? Because here's what discipline really is. It's not a lever you pull when you feel inspired. It's not a trendy morning routine for social media. It's a way of living that silently declares, I matter. My purpose matters. I refuse to waste the only life I have. You don't need to overhaul everything at once. You don't need a complete life reset. You start with one promise kept. One decision made with intention instead of impulse. One morning reclaimed from the jaws of distraction. And slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin to remember your own strength. Because the real achievement, it's not waking up at 5 a.m. for the sake of bragging rights. It's keeping your word to yourself when no one's watching. It's building a version of yourself you can trust day after day. And that, right there, is a kind of freedom no one can give you. And no one can take away. Law 2. Build discipline that matches your nature. Here's something most people get wrong. Not all discipline is created equal. And even more importantly, not all discipline is yours. Some people thrive on strict morning routines, cold showers, endless to-do lists, and carefully crafted schedules. That structure empowers them. It fuels them. Others attempt to follow the same formula. And instead of feeling empowered, they feel suffocated. They feel like failures trapped inside someone else's rhythm, trying to live a life that doesn't belong to them. Why? because discipline that doesn't align with your true nature will always feel like a prison dot. It might look impressive on Instagram. It might sound admirable in a podcast. It might even earn you praise from others. But if the system you're forcing yourself into doesn't fit your temperament, your strengths, and your personal flow, it won't last. And worse, it might lead you to resent the very idea of discipline itself. The Stoics never preached a one-size-fits-all philosophy. They weren't trying to create identical humans living identical lives. They believed in something deeper, self-governance. Marcus Aurelius wasn't Seneca. Epictetus, born a slave, did not live like an emperor. And yet they shared one foundational principle. Every human must find their own internal law and live by it. Not by copying the life of another, not by adopting the system of a guru, but by understanding themselves so deeply that they could create a code that fits. Let's break this down with a simple analogy. Imagine a soldier and a poet. The soldier thrives on strict discipline, hierarchy, precise routines. That structure sharpens him. For the poet, the same structure would suffocate creativity. The poet needs solitude, moments of inspiration, time to think and reflect, even a little chaos. Both individuals require discipline, but not the same kind. The soldier's code might involve early mornings, regimented physical training, and tight scheduling. The poet's code could be strict boundaries against distraction, daily writing quotas, and nourishing creative rituals. Same principle. Different applications. And now ask yourself, what kind of discipline actually fuels me? Not what discipline gets the most praise, not what routine the latest productivity book recommends. What system allows you to grow? What structure makes you feel alive? Some people require silence in the morning. Others need movement. Some work best in long, uninterrupted stretches. Others thrive in short, intense bursts of focus. What matters is that you build a rhythm that fits your nature, and then protect it as if your life depends on it. Because in many ways it does. This is where brutal honesty becomes non-negotiable. If you consistently fail to stick to a system, maybe the issue isn't your willpower. Maybe the system itself is wrong. Maybe you're trying to live inside someone else's discipline because you think it's superior. But discipline isn't about superiority. It's about sustainability. It's about building a structure that you want to return to, even when life gets messy. One that reflects who you are now, while still guiding you gently toward who you're becoming. Consider this practical example. Suppose you keep trying to wake up at 5 a.m. because a book told you that's what successful people do. Yet every morning you hit snooze. You feel like a failure. You tell yourself you're lazy. You blame your mindset. But what if your most creative energy actually emerges at 10 p.m.? What if your biology, your mental flow, your natural rhythm lean toward evenings? In that case, true discipline wouldn't be forcing yourself into early mornings. It would be honoring your nature and designing your structure around it. And that doesn't mean letting yourself off the hook. It means working with your nature, not against it. The Stoics called this living according to nature. Not just the external nature of the world, but the inner nature of yourself. Discipline becomes powerful when it's constructed with that awareness. It shifts from being a form of force to being a form of alignment, less about control, more about congruence. And when you discover that personal rhythm, discipline stops feeling like a daily battle. You stop burning willpower every hour. Instead, you flow with purpose, not because someone's watching, but because your structure feels like home. That's the goal, not perfection, not performance, but a structure that supports your clarity, protects your focus, and honors your personal design. So, ask yourself, right now, am I building a discipline that respects who I am? Or am I still borrowing systems from others, hoping they'll fix me? Then ask the deeper question, what would it look like to build my own code? One that acknowledges my strengths, accounts for my blind spots, and moves me forward without crushing my spirit. Because real discipline isn't about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about becoming the architect of your own mind. Slowly disorder seeps in. It doesn't arrive all at once. First you skip your morning journaling. Then you check your phone before even leaving your bed. You stop planning your week, telling yourself you'll figure it out. You reach for whatever meal is easiest, say yes to whatever's convenient, postpone whatever feels important. And life seems fine. The world doesn't collapse. Not right away, but you do, quietly, invisibly. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And most of that waste doesn't come from pure laziness, as people like to assume. It comes from something far subtler, a lack of clarity. When you abandon structure, you drift into reaction mode. You stop leading your life. Instead, you let life lead you, pulled around by your moods, impulses, and the agendas of other people. You become a passenger in your own story, and that's not freedom. That's invisible slavery. Now, don't misunderstand. Structure isn't about rigidly controlling every second of your day. It's not about forcing yourself into robotic routines or micromanaging your every move until your life feels like a lifeless algorithm. Real structure is about creating sacred boundaries, mental, emotional, physical, that protect what matters most. A morning routine? That's a container for focus. A writing schedule? That's a container for your creativity. A weekly reflection? A container for intentional living. A phone curfew? A container that guards your mind from endless digital invasion. These aren't restrictions. They're acts of self-rescue. They're quiet rebellions against the chaos that the modern world constantly pushes upon you. When you reclaim your time through structure, you also reclaim your energy, and with that reclaimed energy comes something even more precious, your ability to choose, to act not from impulse, but from intention, to respond rather than react. And this is where Stoicism becomes practical. The Stoics never sought to control the world. They focused on controlling their response to it. And that starts with inner order, a deliberate architecture of thought and habit that supports your growth rather than sabotages it. Take a pause right now. Reflect. What have you been tolerating in your life that quietly drains you? Where has small disorder been allowed to accumulate, weighing on you day after day? Maybe it's the physical clutter in your workspace. Maybe it's the mental clutter, that unresolved conversation you've been avoiding, that project you keep postponing, that decision you keep redefining because it secretly scares you. Whatever it is, name it. See it clearly, and then make a decision, not a perfect one, just a clear one, because the longer you live without intentional order, the more you suffer, not in loud, dramatic ways, but in slow, quiet erosion, not from major failures, but from tiny, neglected moments. This is the kind of suffering that doesn't make headlines, but steals years from your life. So choose order in your space, in your time, in your mind, not to impress anyone, not for external validation, but to give your mind the structure it's been begging you for, silently, all along. Remember, discipline isn't about control. It's about freedom, but that freedom must be designed. And order is the blueprint that sets your freedom in motion. Law 3. Success will make you soft. Stay sharp. Success is seductive. That's the danger. It lulls you. It soothes you into believing that the climb is over, that you've arrived, that the hard work is behind you. And that, ironically, is when the real danger begins. Because it's not failure that ruins most people. It's comfort. Comfort breeds complacency, and complacency silently kills momentum. One of the most dangerous lies your mind will ever tell you is this: you've earned a break. Not a rest, a break. A break from your discipline, a break from your values, a break from the very structure that created your progress. And breaks like that don't restore you. They dissolve you. The Stoics understood this trap intimately. They never viewed external success as the goal. They pursued internal strength, and internal strength doesn't maintain itself. It requires constant sharpening. Consider Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. He had more power than almost anyone alive, yet his private journals are filled with harsh reminders to himself: do not become lazy, do not indulge, do not let ego lead. He understood what few do. Every reward carries hidden risks. What risks? The risk of forgetting what built your success in the first place. Think about it. You work hard, you struggle, you discipline yourself. Finally, you win. A promotion, recognition, a financial reward, whatever your goal is, you get it. And what happens? Almost immediately, the urgency fades. You sleep in a little longer. You skip your workout. You slack off on your journaling. You tell yourself, it's fine, I've earned this. But here's the harsh reality. What got you here will not keep you here. If you stop doing the work the moment it starts paying off, you've already begun your decline. Not visibly, not immediately, but the slide has started. This doesn't mean you can't rest. Rest is vital, but there's a world of difference between strategic rest and unconscious surrender. One renews you, the other regresses you. The difference? Awareness. A Stoic doesn't fear rest, they fear drift. That slow, subtle slide into softness. That point where your sharpness dulls, where your hunger fades, where you become a person living off past effort, not present intention. In real life, this looks like becoming lazy in your relationships, assuming they'll maintain themselves. It looks like slowing your learning because you think you already know enough. It's letting your health slip because you've earned it. It's not dramatic. It's decay disguised as reward. How do you counter this? By remembering success isn't a finish line. It's a checkpoint. Every time you reach a goal, the real question isn't, can I relax now? It's, what's next? What part of me needs refining? Where am I starting to coast? The Stoic treats discipline as a lifelong craft, a daily practice. It doesn't matter how far you've come. What matters is, are you still showing up with the same hunger, clarity, and humility that started your journey? Because after success, discipline must evolve. It's no longer fueled by desperation. It's fueled by devotion. You train not because you're behind, but because you're committed. Not because you fear failure, but because you respect the life you're building. This is what makes discipline after success so rare and so powerful. So if you're in a season of success right now, remember, don't relax your standards. Refine them. Use the stability you've built not as an excuse to pause, but as a platform to ascend. And if you've fallen asleep a little, if you've gotten soft, that's okay. No shame. Just wake up. Recommit. Step forward. Not because you're losing, but because you remember who you are. And if you ever forget, remember this. Discipline built you, and only discipline will keep you. Epictetus didn't say, do the right thing when you feel motivated. He didn't say, act when you're inspired. His instruction was simpler, clearer, and infinitely more powerful. He said, first, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's not a feeling. That's a decision. Picture a craftsman, a sculptor. Each morning, they don't stop to wonder if they're in the mood to work. They don't stand by the tools, waiting for creative energy to strike. They simply begin. They pick up the chisel. They step into the routine. And somewhere, not before they begin, but inside the motion itself, focus arrives, momentum builds, clarity returns. That's how discipline works. Action first, emotion follows. But we've built an entire culture around the opposite principle. Waiting for inspiration, waiting for energy, waiting for the elusive right time. But life doesn't wait. Time doesn't wait. And if you're serious about building anything meaningful, whether it's a stronger body, a sharper mind, or a clearer sense of identity, then you cannot afford to live at the mercy of your feelings. You must learn to move, especially when you don't want to, because that's when the movement matters most. Let's simplify this further. Practical steps. You don't want to exercise today? Don't aim for the perfect workout. Just put on your shoes. Step outside. Walk for 5 minutes? That's it. You're avoiding writing? Don't commit to a masterpiece. Just open the page. Type a single sentence. One honest thought. No more. Dreading that difficult task? Don't plan for flawless execution. Set a timer, 10 minutes. Begin anyway. The point isn't perfection. The goal is initiation. Because once the body is moving, the mind will catch up. And what once felt impossible will slowly start to feel inevitable. The Stoics understood something modern psychology has only recently confirmed. The hardest part of discipline is the beginning, the first breath, the first step. That subtle, internal shift from passive resistance to active presence. That is where your power hides, not in grand heroic gestures, but in those small, deliberate micro-actions taken in defiance of your mood and in service to your mission. So ask yourself honestly, what are you postponing today simply because you don't feel ready? Then ask something deeper. What if you stopped needing to feel ready at all? Because once you learn to act without motivation, you become something most people never will. someone who shows up regardless, someone who moves despite resistance, someone who no longer waits to feel powerful, because they've remembered that they already are. Law 4. Live by conscious choice, not automatic reaction. How much of your daily life, your decisions, your habits, your priorities is actually chosen, and how much is simply inherited noise? It's a question most avoid, because it cuts deeper than comfort allows. If you're honest, you'll see most of us aren't living, we're reacting, following scripts we never questioned, playing roles we never consciously chose, running habits we never deliberately installed. We wake up, reach for our phones, follow routines, participate in conversations, even pursue goals, not because they align with our deepest values, but simply because they're familiar, comfortable, safe. The Stoics warned us about this. Carl Jung, centuries later, echoed the same danger. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In other words, if you don't slow down to examine your patterns, they will become your prison, and you won't even recognize the wills. You'll mistake them for identity, but they're not who you are. They're simply what you've never questioned. At its highest form, discipline isn't just about effort. It's about awareness. It's about reclaiming control from the automatic responses that run your life. Discipline is the act of choosing, consciously, repeatedly. It means pausing before you say yes. It means catching yourself before you reach for that habitual distraction. It means asking, in small moments, is this action mine? Did I choose it? Or is it inherited from someone else's script? Let's be brutally honest. Much of what we proudly call discipline is just conditioned behavior we've never interrogated. Maybe you grew up believing that achievement was the only way to earn love. Now you overwork constantly and call it ambition. Maybe you were taught that playing small keeps you safe. Now you sabotage progress and call it humility. Maybe you avoid difficult conversations, not because you're peaceful, but because you're scared. These aren't conscious choices. They're unconscious defenses. And left unexamined, they become the architecture of your life. To live like a Stoic is to stop long enough to ask dangerous questions. Why do I chase this goal? Why do I speak this way, think this way, eat this way? Does this habit serve me? Or is it just familiar? Because the real work of discipline isn't about doing more. It's about choosing more. When you start living by conscious choice, your life transforms. You stop reacting to life. You start directing it. You stop following habits blindly. You start building habits deliberately. You stop being pulled by outside forces. You start walking toward your own inner clarity. This doesn't mean rejecting everything from your past. It means sorting through it, keeping what aligns, releasing what doesn't, refining what needs change. That's real discipline. Not just doing hard things, but doing the right hard things, the ones that move you closer to who you're trying to become. In real life, this looks like swapping morning scrolling for 5 minutes of silence, choosing patience instead of anger in a heated conversation, letting go of a belief that no longer serves you. These choices seem small, but because they're made consciously, they're revolutionary. So pause today. Reflect. Where are you still living on autopilot? Which of your habits are actually unconscious fears in disguise? What would it look like to act from presence, not programming? Because in the end, discipline isn't just about doing. It's about deciding. When your life becomes a series of conscious choices, not reactive defaults, you don't just gain order, you gain freedom. If this message resonates with the part of you that's tired of distractions and ready for real growth, make sure to subscribe to StoicCraft now. New videos every week with no fluff, just timeless strategies to help you master your mind and rebuild your discipline. Join the community that's choosing clarity over chaos. Subscribe today.